Welcome along to our live stream. We're going to be discussing the Russian Grand Prix full review of basically how the entire race went. I'm joined by two special guests this evening. I've got Luke Murphy from Formula Spy. Welcome along, Luke.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've got Fergal Walsh as well from motorsportweek.com. You're very welcome along, Fergal.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
We have a very, very busy race to discuss, mostly for the wrong reasons, really, because it's all penalties and controversy rather than actual racing. So let's get started. Lewis Hamilton picking up a pretty controversial set of penalties today, lads, with the pre-race start infringements. What was your take on those? Fergal, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. I can't really remember something like that happening, not recently. But it's kind of weird the way Hamilton this year seems to be getting himself into these minor little incidents that are, I guess, sort of, well, hampering him a little bit, but then again, he still has a massive lead in the championship. But yeah, the incident today where he went down to the exit of the pit lane to do the start, quite bizarre. He was told, of course, over team radio that it was fine, but and then it wasn't. But I mean, if that's the rules, that's the rules. And he, I guess, didn't agree with the penalties, nor did Mercedes. But they took it on the chin, and he was still able to get a podium. But a really strange incident overall, and just another one of those weird ones where Hamilton seems to be getting involved in this year.
Luke, what was your initial opinion of the penalties handed out to Lewis?
Well, it's very unlike Mercedes, who seem to have this machine-like operation about them, and it's always kind of weird when these top unbeatable teams seem to make very human errors. But it was just exactly that. It was just a communication error. I think it was described as Hamilton asking if he could do it again from a bit further down, do a practice start from a bit further down the pit lane. I think they said that because they couldn't see him, they assumed that he just thought he meant just a little bit further down, not leaving the pit lane entirely and doing it from where they held down the pit exit. So it was just a human error that can still happen in Formula One, and it just so happens that two of these human type errors have happened for Lewis Hamilton in not too far apart, and it's. I think like we alluded to, it was one of those things where the only thing that will stop Lewis Hamilton taking the title seems to be these human errors, because it's the only way that he seems to be having the bad races at the moment.
Two separate 5-second time penalties for two separate incidents pre-race. He thought it was okay. Mercedes, based on the circumstances of the time, thought it was okay, and then immediately the race stewards announced that they were going to be doing an investigation. They handed out the penalties and all that. So obviously that ruined Lewis's race, putting him back by 10 seconds compared to where he should have been. He was obviously pretty annoyed by that. But then it was announced after the race that the penalty points that he got, so he got 2 penalty points, for one each for the separate transgressions. But those points have since been rescinded. Now, for me, this is where it kind of sits a bit oddly, because the FIA haven't rescinded the penalty completely. All they've done is basically said that the penalty is more Mercedes' fault than it is Lewis's fault. But the race event notes that where it outlined where these practice starts were supposed to be conducted from, that's not something that's only specifically for the teams to read. Like, I read them as a journalist. They're handed out for the drivers to read. But in this case, it seems to be a case of Lewis was ignorant of the rule that defined where the practice starts should be from, and yet it was Mercedes that picked up the blame. And that for me sits a little bit oddly because it's basically saying that ignorance was a valid defence. Fergal, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess there's a point there, and also it does kind of set a dangerous precedent going forward. I think if it's the team to blame, let's say if there's a pit lane incident where the driver is let go into the path of another driver coming in the pit lane. Normally, that driver would get whatever penalties and penalty points, but then it's not really the driver's fault because he goes when the team tells him to go. So it'll be interesting to see what this does going forward. But I mean, Mercedes obviously argued a good case, and I mean, 25,000 euros is a lot of money to me anyway, but maybe to a huge organization like Mercedes, the money they're spending, it's not so much. And it perhaps also as well does give Lewis a bit of breathing room because he was getting quite close to those 12 penalty points that would give him a race ban. I think he's now down to 8 over the last 12 months, and I don't think any drop until I think after the Turkish Grand Prix.
Yeah, in November, yeah.
Yeah, so still just have to be a little bit careful. And I think even then, points will carry over into 2021 because of stuff he's picked up this year. So it'll be a tedious few races, I think, for Lewis. The monetary fine rather than the penalty points is definitely a benefit for him going forward. But he did have some interesting comments about why he was penalised after the race anyway. But I'm interested to see where this decision will take a fun going forward, whether it has a major implication or not.
It's that separation of driver and team in this situation that's kind of rubbed me up the wrong way, because in most situations they're penalised together. That's why a driver, say for instance, when it comes to an engine penalty, the driver and the team are penalised, even though the driver has done nothing wrong. So in this situation, the time penalty has been applied to Lewis, but the penalty points that have been established through precedent have been rescinded. And that to me just seems strange, because then obviously Mercedes were given the 25,000 euro fine as well. Luke, does that sit well for you?
Well, going on back onto the penalty points issue. If you have a driver who's released into the path of another car for the team's told him to go. I don't think a driver gets any penalty points in that instance, do they?
I'm not sure.
I don't believe they do. I think it's they get a penalty in the race. And the team will get a monetary punishment for it. But I don't think the driver is punished with penalty points after the race. I don't believe so anyway.
Idea of that?
I'm not sure, but I just use that as an example. And like Clamps was saying, it does draw a fine line between what can be defined as a team error and a driver error.
Yeah, so I think the point I was going to make was to say that they can differentiate between driver and team errors in other examples. Is the main point I think I was trying to make. So I disagree that they've always done it as a whole package of find the team, punish the driver in the race, and giving penalty points afterwards. I don't think they're always grouped together. So in that instance, I can agree with Stuart's deciding not to give the penalty to Hamilton because because using your example of Hamilton has a view of the race notes. Before the race, he also knows the rule of you can't drive into another car, and he's still in control of the car when a car's being released into the pit lane. So I think the team. I think it does have to come down to the team because Lewis is seeking clarification and he's been reassured by the team to go and do this practice start further down the pit lane, or so he thinks. So yeah, I can appreciate the penalty points not being given to Hamilton. As interesting though as it would be to see him pick up a one race ban, I think that would be the thing that needs to give Valtteri Bottas a shot at the title. But yeah, I support it. I support the rescinding of the penalty points.
I think there was some ambiguity as to the wording of the event notes themselves, because they said that you can pull over after the red lights, just pull over on the right hand side, but it doesn't say how far the distance is that you're allowed to pull forward. So technically Lewis was right to pull over to the right hand side, but I don't think that they really meant do it 200 meters further up the road. So I think it was the not exact wording of it that's maybe made the stewards pull back on the penalty a little bit. What do you think, Fergal?
Well, it also raises the question as well. A very simple question. I don't know if he offered. Why? Why did he want to actually go down towards the pit exit? Because presumably the whole weekend he was doing the practice starts where everyone else was. Right after the lights on the right hand side. So I don't know why he wanted to actually go down to well beyond
the end of the pit lane. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But
he was parked up at the end of the pit lane, wasn't he? So I wonder if he kind of messed up his own start procedure and wanted to have another crack at it, or something like that.
Yeah, but you can just come back round and do it at the same spot again, which I think he did anyway.
This was over half an hour before the race started, so he had plenty of time to do it another once or twice if he needed to. So, a strange decision, but either way, he made some interesting comments after the race, saying he felt the stewards were out to get him, and sometimes we see Lewis playing up the victim card just a little bit when it comes to. We've seen him do it before in the past with the stewards. I personally think the stewards are a little bit inconsistent in their application of penalties, and in particular sometimes ignoring certain drivers' transgressions. I'll move on to that in a minute. But do you think Lewis has any sort of valid point when he says that they're out to get him, considering that a race ban would liven up the championship, Luke?
Not particularly. I think if you look back through the list of incidents that have happened, I can't really see any argument for any of them. I think two of them. Four of his points are those clashes with Albon in the last 12 months, aren't they?
Yeah.
Certainly they're. I think still at fault for both of those incidents, and penalty points have been handed out for taking drivers out of the race before. They will again. So I have no issue with that one. What are the other ones? One was the pit lane issue at Monza, wasn't it?
Entering the pit lane while it was closed. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a slam dunk. Really, I think. What was the other one? He's got up to 8. Is he out of the 12?
Yeah, I think he didn't get one in Austria qualifying for impeding someone. I can't remember.
Was it in Q3 or?
I can't remember, but he got a great job in qualifying. I think he got for that. I seen the list earlier. I should have memorized it. Took a note of it.
I remember thinking though they're all legit. So
Nothing jumped out at me as being an incorrect decision. So I don't buy the whole out to get me thing. Maybe it's just adding more reason for him to say one of his catchphrases, like rise. At the end of it, I don't know, but yeah, I have no reason to argue with the penalties that have been handed to him previously.
You brought up the clash with Alex Albon in Austria as being one of those examples, and this ties in nicely with the argument that the stewards are a little bit inconsistent, because on the first lap we saw Ferrari's Charles Leclerc and Racing Point's Lance Stroll come together in what was actually a very, very similar incident to Hamilton and Albon. So on the occasion in Austria, we saw Hamilton get slapped with a penalty for hitting Albon, But Charles Leclerc was able to completely eliminate Lance Stroll from the race, and the incident wasn't looked at, which was a little bit strange, considering there was a car taken out of P7, and Charles was able to continue without any damage, without any incident, and he went on and scored some points. So why was there a blind eye shown for Charles when in the same situation Lewis picked up a penalty in Austria? Fergal, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, we know that the stewards are taking a more lenient view to crashes and accidents that happen on the first lap compared to other incidents. But I don't necessarily agree with that because does that just give a driver more incentive to make a more dangerous move? Maybe not. I don't know the driver, but it's a bit strange. And I mean, Stroll himself said that it was ridiculous that Leclerc didn't get a penalty for that. I mean, and also you have as well, regardless of it being the first lap or whatever lap, from event to event you have different stewards. It's not the same team that goes from one race to the next. It's always changing. There's always different personnel coming in. So perhaps that plays a factor too in the decision making of different people. I know they have to stick to a guide and a rule book and everything, but different personalities might interpret these rules differently, and they might interpret the incidents differently. But I mean, it was it's at the same time. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago there was the argument that people didn't like penalties handed out because they thought that it would stop drivers from going racing and risking stuff. So it's a very fine line. But I mean, in the case of when a driver gets completely taken out of the race and there is one clear driver at fault, I think perhaps that should be a penalty regardless of whether it is first lap or not.
Luke, anything to add to that?
Nothing more to add. I think I got away with that one.
Same as he got away with driving with no seatbelts in Spain, which was a clear violation of something that's written into the International Sporting Code. Again, something that wasn't investigated. So you can see why Lewis might think sometimes that there's a little bit of bias towards him. I would put it more down to just the amount of outcry sometimes. Maybe the position that they're both in. Leclerc this year is somewhat mired in the anonymous midfield, while Hamilton is obviously leading the championship by 50 whatever points. So do you think sometimes the stewards are just kind of going, let's just wait and see if there's an outcry?
I'd like to think not, because that's not how you should be stewarding things. It's like if a football referee was to wait and see what the crowd reaction was, Jesus Christ, he'd be handing out red cards, three or four red cards a match. You can't wait for the outcry for before making decisions. It has to be isolated and an independent view. And I think it would help you have the same stewards across all the races. And I know we kind of have the same core group, but there's a couple of additional ones as well that change race to race, isn't there? So, or is it just the driver steward that changes from race to race?
Just the driver steward, isn't it? They have a pool from which to select stewards from, depending on availability and location. And I think it's just the driver steward that changes. And for this race, it was Mika Salo. So
okay. I mean, Mika's been around a bit. You'd like to think he knows what's what, but it made us then come down to addressing the kind of turning a blind eye to the first lap kind of blanket rule that they might need to tweak, because I think Stroll's right to feel a bit aggrieved by that incident.
Agreed. Fergal, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, not really, to be honest. Felt a bit sorry for Stroll too, because
great start.
Yeah, and that car, of course, with the racing point upgrades, and the second race in a row where he was taken out through no fault of his own, when he was probably on for some, in Magello he was on for some good points, and you could probably argue with the pace that car had this weekend. He could have been on some for some more good points. So yeah, a shame for him. But yeah, I tend to agree that Leclerc did get away with that one a little bit.
One man who did get good points today was obviously the race winner, Valtteri Bottas, converting third place into first. Same as he did back in 2017. There was a bit of luck involved, obviously, in that, but he was on the mediums to start the race, was able to pull away from Max Verstappen pretty easily, and once Lewis was out of the way, pretty much cantered home from there, really. But his radio message after the race was very, very full of swagger, we might say, when he said, "To whom it may concern, feck you." Luke, I thought, considering that the man that he keeps trying to beat was only out of his way due to penalties, I thought that was a bit cringeworthy from Valtteri. What was your take on
it? I was a bit confused by that message because maybe he actually didn't really know what was going on to Lewis's race. I'd like to think he's somewhat aware of what's going on, that he has a penalty and things like that. But if he's, I can understand it if he's genuinely not aware and he just thinks that Lewis is just I don't know. There's something has happened to him all by himself. I don't know, but assuming Valtteri does know everything that's happened, then maybe save that line for
beating him
Hamilton in a straight fight without one arm tied behind his back. But it was well managed from Valtteri, and I'm a bit disappointed we didn't get to see what might happen strategy-wise with the two Mercedes. I have a feeling that they'll probably would have just both ended up on the hard tyres, and Hamilton might have just used his advantage, initial positional advantage to pit first, get a quick laps in, and then stay ahead of Bottas when he subsequently made his stop. That's kind of how I think it might have played out. So it's tough to see how Valtteri could have beaten him. But you could argue that he already knew about the penalty and he decided not to race too hard in the first stint. I don't know. It just would have been interesting to see if Valtteri could finally take that battle to Lewis Hamilton. We didn't get to see that in Russia, but I think Valtteri would have wanted his slice of good luck to come at a track where he wasn't too good at, because he was probably expected to be pretty quick at Russia anyway. He'd gone well there in the past, and if his kind of strong track, if his strong track is the one where Lewis Hamilton has his bad luck, sort of like it almost negates the luck, because he was kind of expected to beat him in Russia anyway, because it was a Valtteri track. But
you say Valtteri track and you say a strong track. He was only over half a second slower in qualifying.
I know that was the weird thing. It was this was supposed to be the venue where he was supposed to be strong and could challenge Lewis, but it's another kind of shoulders kind of moment, and you just kind of you can't really see the momentum from there. You'd like to think it could be a confidence boost in the side turn, but there's going to have to be more than that before anyone's going to be convinced that it could be a close championship between the two.
Fergal, are you convinced this is the start of a Bottas comeback?
I mean, who am I to say no? I'm not. I don't think so. Who the hell knows? 2020. But yeah, I mean, we all know the strength of Lewis can do, and how quickly he can bounce back from these sort of tough races. But yeah, I mean, it was a controlled race from Bottas on his team radio. I mean, what you're saying. I don't want to be critical of him. Over at the end of the day, he did win the race. I'm guessing there was a lot of adrenaline in that. Adrenaline must have felt good after. Yeah, he did win a race. He did win a race, first race this year. So I don't know. He can enjoy it. He can enjoy it. Do what he wants really. But he'll know that that's just a small little chink in the whole big fight that the World Championship, he knows that he still has a big mountain to climb. If he has any hope of winning the title this year. And when you're against Lewis Hamilton, and the form that he's been in this year, it's very very tough. And Valtteri will undoubtedly know that.
Do you remember the first time you said it in 2019? And was it the race straight afterwards, rolling into the paddock with his merch on with the quote on a t-shirt. I wonder if he was kind of doing that just to flog a bit more merchandise into the next race. He's going to rock up with his branded shirt on.
Well, the gap, I think, after that race has been reduced down to 43 or 44 points, I think. But I'm going to put my neck out and just say that I don't think the gap is going to get any smaller than it is now. I don't think this is the start of a Bottas train of momentum. I don't think we've seen anything from him in the 4 years of him being at Mercedes to suggest that he's capable of doing it without extraneous circumstances. So I'm just going to say I think the gap is still going to be 50 plus points at the end of the championship. And anyone who says otherwise, I'm going to fight you.
Well, it's always nice to be optimistic, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not optimistic of this getting any closer than it is now.
I think we're how far is Verstappen behind Bottas? Is it another 30 points back or something?
Yeah, it was close for a little while, but the two retirements really have put Max down quite a bit.
Yeah. I'd fancy Max to be challenging second place more than I would Bottas challenging for first.
Yeah. Speaking of Max's race, it was a pretty quiet one overall. He didn't have to do a whole lot. He had that little bit of fun on the opening lap, but ultimately lost out to Valtteri. But even if he hadn't lost that position at the start, you'd have to say it didn't really look on for Red Bull or Max today. Either way, what do you think, Fergal?
I mean, it's kind of what we've come back to, unfortunately, from Red Bull. They're faster than pretty much everyone else except Mercedes, who they're a lot slower than. There was a little bit of interest if Verstappen could potentially do something with his medium tires compared to the softs of Hamilton, but that all got thrown out the window. His qualifying lap was sensational to get onto the front row. Really well done for Max for that. But it was just in the race. It was just another one of those for him where he was stuck in no man's land. No one to defend from, no one to attack in front. But at the end of it, he still comes away with a podium. He's racking a lot of them up, and split the two Mercedes. What he the maximum he could do really. Didn't do much wrong at all the whole weekend. The car is just not there. Just not really more you can do. So overall it was another very mature and. Very respectable weekend for Max.
I couldn't have said it really any better. Luke, do you have anything else to add to that? No.
No.
What
he said.
Quite enough race for Max. So there's not a whole lot to say about it, but well done on P2 for him. Sergio Perez, he was kind of one of the stars of the race for me, really, because he came home in P4. He pretty much had the measure of everyone else in the midfield, even though he's still running the older version of the RP20, and I think he would have had a stiff battle with Lance Stroll over that position if Stroll hadn't been eliminated at the start. But Sergio is still very much putting himself in the shop window for a seat somewhere for next year with performances like that. Luke, do you think that might have sealed a seat for him next year?
Yeah, I think he's always likely to be a big contender for a seat next year. Anyway, even without that. But I think that is something that would you could probably negotiate another thousand on his contract or something. If he can take a still fundamentally a midfield car upper midfield, but still midfield, and, get big points out of it. Even fell behind the Reynolds, and he had to work his way back up to a higher scoring position. I thought it was a very competent drive, and still showing why he should be on the grid. I wonder who's ahead in the drivers' championship now. Is it Stroll or Perez?
I'm going to check that. Talk amongst yourselves.
I think you know what I'm getting at. Because based off Racing Point's logic, all the updates are the driver who happens to be ahead in the drivers' championship, and so the updates are Stroll. But if Perez has somehow worked his way back into driver one position.
At the moment, Stroll is ahead by 1 point. They're P8 and P9 in the championship.
So every single update that they have is straight to Stroll.
Because of that 1 point.
Because of that one point.
For now, anyway.
Never mind. I thought it might corner Racing Point into you said this, and it's like okay, we did have some front wings and stuff.
I don't think that's going to happen either way, is it?
No, I don't. But it'd be nice to kind of see them squirm a bit over it and wriggle out of it.
Fergal, we saw Gunther Steiner shaking his head at Roman Grosjean on the TV feed when Roman hit the styrofoam bollards during his battle with Vettel. And on a day where Perez is putting in a performance like he did, and Grosjean is, not putting in the best of performances towards the back, do you think that's the kind of thing that will make Steiner go, right, let's go with Sergio next year?
I don't know. I mean, we know the Haas car isn't a very fun car to drive. Well, Grosjean made that extremely clear throughout the weekend. So he's driving a difficult car. On the contrary, Perez is driving a car where he's really enjoying. There's more to Grosjean's tenure at Haas than complaining over the team radio. And I'm sure he's committed and done a lot more for the team than that. But I think it does seem that going into next year something will change at Haas. I think something has to change at Haas. Just to get something fresh, something new in there. It's kind of bizarre. It's only the second lineup had since coming to the grid. They had Grosjean and Gutierrez, and they had Magnussen and Grosjean the year after 2017. So something needs to change there. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the Ferrari juniors came in at that seat, and then perhaps Perez as well. But realistically, I think Perez's only options to stay on the grid next year is Alfa Romeo and Haas. Right now, realistically, none of those cars are great to drive, especially compared to Racing Point, which would be Aston Martin. But I guess for Perez it will boil down to whether he wants to commit himself to a project like that, knowing that he'll be further down the grid next year, or if he wants to do something else. And Steiner, Gene Haas, I'm sure they're well aware of the potential and the talent that Perez possesses. He's shown that throughout his time at Force India, Racing Point, and all that. So they'll definitely be getting a good driver if they brought him on. So he's hoping to have some news in the next few weeks. So hopefully, I'd like to see him stay in F1 too. I think he's very deserving of a place there.
Yeah, let's move on to Daniel Ricciardo, who we also saw getting a penalty today, and his response was, okay, I'll just drive faster, and he proceeded to do so. He said it really lit a fire under his bum, and he got on with it, and he finished the necessary distance ahead of Charles Leclerc, so he was able to finish P5. Don't think any better was really on, even without the penalty. I think Perez was too far out of reach for him. But on a day where McLaren kind of self-destructed themselves a little bit, didn't look particularly great, and Renault are right up there fighting at the front of the midfield, Ricciardo has to be getting a little bit worried that he might have made the wrong decision, Luke.
Well, I mean, you compare these kind of conversations to a couple of months ago when McLaren were, they were getting a podium in Austria, and people might have been thinking, oh, has Daniel Ricciardo, made the completely correct decision in all of this, and I think just by the very nature of the midfield, if you're hopping from one midfield team to another, there's going to be that kind of to and fro of have I made the right decision or not, because ultimately it is mostly, especially next season, it is going to be mostly a sideways step from Renault to McLaren. So I don't think he'll be too worried about it yet. I'm sure McLaren have enough resource to fight back this season and update the car enough to have a competitive car in 2021. So I don't think he's going to be too worried just yet.
It was a great drive though, Fergal, wasn't it?
It was, really good. I mean, not well, pretty much what you expect from Ricciardo. And that Renault car has been really impressive over the last half of the race. We thought that perhaps the car would just be fast at the likes of Spa, Monza, where the top speed was good, but they've been there at all different types of tracks. So it's really good to see that, and it was a great drive from Ricciardo. Actually, he said himself that it wasn't anything close to a perfect drive. He said he made some errors in the race. Of course, that error that got him the 5-second penalty, which he took blame for. That was a bit clumsy, I think. And he said that he just stepped on the brake and he felt the lock up, and he had no chance. But after that, he gave us the really impressive recovery from that, you could say, when he was able to stretch out over his rivals and keep that P5 position at the end of the race. And just to add on to what Luke was saying about him, if he made the wrong decision or whatever, I think of where you look, if you look at where McLaren was a couple of years ago, and look at where they are now, it's a completely new atmosphere, a completely new team almost, and it just sort of feels like the team is still going on the up, and with the budget cap coming in, the new regulations, I think the expertise that the McLaren team possesses, I think he should be fine going forward. I hope so, because we need someone like him fighting towards the front of the grid.
Esteban Ocon is going to have to raise his game though a little bit, because once again Ricciardo was the quicker driver, and Ocon even admitted that he was the quicker driver. What was your take on Ocon's race, Luke?
It started off good. He made a great start. He was running P4 for the opening stint, and then he fell behind Ricciardo at the no. He got held up by the Ferrari, and then because he couldn't pass the Ferrari, he was instructed to let Ricciardo have a go. So in the race, he was ahead of his teammate up until he kind of got that call. So I don't think it was as it certainly wasn't a disaster race from Ocon. But at the same time, I don't think any of us were really thinking that it was going to be as one-sided at Renault as it seems to have been. And it's certainly something that Ocon needs to improve on. He doesn't have him in qualifying, and doesn't seem to have him in race pace either. So Ocon needs to try a few things. He's got the Renault contract in his back pocket for next season, where Alonso's going to be coming in. So he's going to be is he going to be team leader? I don't know. He's going to be the driver with more recent experience at Renault anyway. So he needs to try a few things in order to get confidence and start challenging Ricciardo a bit more, so that no doubt is left on the team when Ricciardo leaves. Because if you have a faster driver who leaves the team as still the unquestioned fastest driver, then I guess you've kind of got the shadow over the team where they're thinking, oh, well, could that car go a little bit faster, with someone else in it? You don't know. So yeah, for his own sanity moving into next season, I think he needs to up the pace. basically.
Yeah, let's move on to Ferrari. There was signs of some recovery for Ferrari in terms of pace, at least for one of their cars today. Charles Leclerc, he was solidly decent throughout the entire weekend, really, in the midfield. And aside from that very clumsy move on Lance Stroll on the first lap, he was pretty faultless all weekend. But then in the other car, you've got Sebastian Vettel, who really seemed to struggle massively throughout the entire weekend, and we saw him crash during Q2, and then he spent the majority of the race. I thought it was funny where in the press release Ferrari sent out, they said Sebastian spent his race outside the points and couldn't make progress. So he seems to be trying still, but there's not a whole lot happening there for Vettel. Presumably he's just counting down the races now at this stage. But for Ferrari, there has to be some optimism that their updates that they brought here seem to have given them a little bit more confidence, Virgil.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, yeah, for Leclerc, it was a really solid weekend, and yeah, we're P6 in the end, wasn't it? He said himself that he was not at all expecting a result like that coming here, and yeah, I guess it's semi encouraging for them. Still a long way to go to where they want to be, but yeah, it's kind of a shame though that these performances are only happening on the one side of the garage. On Leclerc's side, in contrast to Vettel, who is struggling massively for whatever reason. I hope one day we get a true picture and a true understanding of what exactly is going wrong for Vettel this year. But yeah, I mean, it's been a terrible season so far from Ferrari, and it's not going to get better, I think, quickly anytime soon. So, results like this can, be quite encouraging for them. And yeah, for Leclerc, I mean, like I said, apart from that lap one incident, he definitely drove a very mature race and an impressive race.
Luke,
Do we?
yeah, sorry.
Just gonna ask, do we think that Vettel has mentally got his out of office notifications on and is kind of thinking towards the break and just get this season done?
Yeah, I think Mark Gallagher said on Twitter he's already in new job mode, and he's just counting down the days, ticking off the days as they come. Personally, I would have thought that a racing driver, based on their instincts, wouldn't be able to, drive slower or, perform worse than they're capable of. But, it is a mental game, and Vettel really seems to have mentally just switched off at this stage. He says he's still trying, but you don't really get that impression as an external viewer anymore. And Fergal, what's your take on Vettel's mindset in these last couple of races?
I mean, it's difficult because Vettel, he's had troubles at Ferrari for the last couple of years. He's had a more competitive car in the last couple of years compared to what he has this year, but I think it must be mentally very draining what he's endured over the last couple of years, especially with Leclerc coming in last year and driving as the way he did, and he's kind of the lead driver in that team now, going forward, it seems. So I think I would gather that signing up for Aston Martin lifted a huge weight and a huge load off him. But to be honest, I wouldn't hope that he's sort of checked out mentally and that he's just resigned to to where he is, and then he'll rock up at Aston Martin and take it from there. I would like to hope, and I think Vettel's that kind of guy that just keeps on trucking along, trying to do the best he can. But I mean, right now it's just not there for him. And like I said, I hope one day we truly understand why. Maybe it's because he's mentally checked out. Maybe it's something a bit more mischievous, a bit more tinfoil hat worthy. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's kind of sad to see him struggling the way he is now. But it is good that next year he'll be yeah, in a new team, in a new environment, and hopefully yeah, back on his game again.
Luke, have you anything to add on Vettel or Ferrari?
Um, Nothing that hasn't really been said in recent times. It's just, just suck it up, carry on, keep going, and hopefully make the best of 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and hopefully we do see Vettel with a new lease of life once he gets his hands on the Aston Martin. I don't want to keep you too long, lads, so we'll quickly go through the last couple of teams. McLaren, Carlos Sainz, that was some error on the first lap from Carlos Sainz. That was just plain and simple a complete misjudgment of the angle of that corner, Fergal. That was a bad mistake.
It was, yeah, it was pretty poor from Sainz. At the same time, it's a pretty dangerous re-entry configuration. Anyway, I think it's very very narrow, and depending on what angle you're taking at, it's yeah. I mean, I was even thinking during practice and qualifying, someone could really hit that wall. I didn't think they'd actually do it, but yeah, I guess Sainz was just eager to get back onto the track, misjudged the whole situation, and slammed into the wall. And it seems like every year the rejoin chicane at that corner changes a little bit. Sometimes you just go through one bollard, then there's a little squiggle, and then in this phase there was a little bit more added to it. But yeah, it was a hard hit. Glad to see it was okay. Those kind of accidents always make me cringe a little bit when the driver doesn't have time to get their hand off the steering wheel. Um, but yeah, he seemed to be fine. I took the blame for the crash. I mean, there was clearly no one else at fault other than him, so he couldn't do much more than that. But yeah,
It's rare. It's rare that you see a driver make an error to the extent where it's like, I'm going to drive straight into a wall.
It was
yeah.
a bit PlayStation, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I imagine I could do something very, very similar, and probably have done at several points on my ventures into the F1 2020 game. It was, it was that kind of level of mistake. But
yeah.
they
It
are
was
human
silly.
after all.
Yeah, it was silly, and it seemed to compromise Lando's race as well after running over debris. It was just a bit of a miserable race for McLaren all around. Lando reporting his steering was going from light to heavy in the early parts of the race, but a bit of a missed opportunity today, Fergal, for McLaren.
It was. And McLaren they've been pretty consistent throughout the whole year. I think getting good points. They're up there in third in the standings, but after today, I think they're only 2 points ahead now of Racing Point for third. So yeah, getting pretty close, but definitely a missed opportunity. With both drivers scoring no points. Although, I mean, to be fair to Norris, he gave it a good go going very long on those hard tires. I think he came in when the safety car was called, and then didn't pit until the last few laps when I'm guessing the tires were about to let go after he dropped out of the points. But yeah, good effort all round from him. But definitely a weekend to forget for McLaren.
A good effort as well, I thought, from the Alpha boys with Kimi getting up very high as well in the first half of the race, up to P9. I think he got up as far as on the hard tyres. Obviously, didn't have quite the pace to hold on to that in the second half of the race after his pit stop and all. But considering where Alfa Romeo were at the start of the season, for Giovinazzi to come home in 11th, I think he was, yeah, 11th, and Raikkonen then to come home in 15th. There are definitely clear signs of improvement from Alfa to the point where they are able to fight with a Ferrari on track on occasion.
I think it was a good weekend in particular for Giovinazzi. It was, I think, we touched on it in the past about him needing to start consistently beating Raikkonen to really have much of a chance of retaining a seat in Formula One. and and yeah, he outqualified Raikkonen and outraced him. He's finished ahead. So unless I missed something glaringly obvious that was the big differentiator between the two, I think Giovinazzi could count that as a good weekend.
Yeah, the Alpha haven't mentioned any extraneous circumstances to explain the difference between the two. So I think on this occasion, Giovinazzi just legitimately got the better of Kimi over a race distance, which is not really something we see very often, Fergal.
It's not. Alpha Romeo have struggled this year massively. At times they've been the slowest car in the field. So yeah, to see them, I guess, do better. It's still not points, but do better. It's encouraging and good for Giovinazzi as well to have a, a more positive. Too little, too late for next year. I don't know. We'll perhaps know more in the coming weeks, but definitely one of the more encouraging races this year for him.
Well, next up, it's the Eiffel Grand Prix. We're off to Germany, the Nürburgring, and more than likely Lewis Hamilton is going to get his little slice of history on Mercedes' home ground as well. So I suppose that's something to look forward to for the Nürburgring, Luke.
Yeah, and possibly equaling Schumacher's record in Schumacher's home country, as a sort of, tying it all together kind of way. But yeah, it's it's a circuit that they haven't been to for a little while, so it'd be very interesting to see who hits the ground running there, see if it's going to be anything other than just a Mercedes victory. But you'd expect Lewis Hamilton to be able to come back to form and equal the record. I think I think Lewis Hamilton will be odds on to equal some records.
Yeah. Before we go, Nicole Radcliffe says hello, and also Martin Hodge. He says, and I like the way he's worded this. He said, "Great race from Charles Leclerc, shite race from Seb. Aston Martin have made a big mistake." Fergal, what would your take be on that? Have Aston made a mistake? Racing point.
Yeah, no, I'll just try and find my crystal ball here. I mean, time will tell what happens. I'd like to think that Vettel can get back to where he used to be at the top of his game, and whether the issues now are down to him or down to Ferrari, I think will become more obvious when he joins Aston Martin next year. But there will be a lot of pressure on him anyway, regardless of that, because he'll be the team leader, representing that brand on a new era for that team that wants to go forward towards the front of the grid. So it won't be a holiday for Vettel, but it'll be a new project. And he the start of his project at Ferrari was all happy and rosy. Same happened at Red Bull. So maybe it can happen again at Aston Martin starting next year.
Luke, anything to add to that?
Only that peak Vettel is what we all want to see to improve the quality of the grid, and if we are able to get peak Sebastian Vettel back by him moving to Aston Martin, then I'm happy for it. But like Fergal said, only time will tell. But Aston Martin will just have seen what he can do in the past, and obviously they think he's still capable of doing that again. So you'd like to think that these racing experts know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But we shall see.
Vettel in his prime is still a formidable opponent, and as Otmar Safnauer said, Seb just needs a little bit of love. So hopefully next year that'll be the case, and we'll see that peak Sebastian back. But listen, guys, I'm going to let you go, and to everyone who joined us on the stream this evening, thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing a subscriber giveaway coming up this week. And lads, we'll have a lot to discuss over the next week.
Did you want some? Did you want some kind of sound effect from us when you said subscriber giveaway? Were we supposed to go? Ooh.
Subscriber giveaway, friend. No, just I'll be doing a giveaway before the Eiffel Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. So yeah, we'll have lots to chat about. Lucas Murph on Twitter. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. And Fergal, I've completely forgotten your Twitter handle. What's yours?
Fergal F1.
Fergal F1 at Fergal F1 on Twitter. Luke Murphy from Formula Spy and Fergal Walsh from motorsportweek.com. Thank you both very much for joining me, and we'll talk